I recently came across a TikTok video while researching a topic about liturgy that really surprised me for a couple of reasons. One, because I don't have a TikTok account and I pretty much never watch TikTok videos, so I was surprised to find myself watching one. But two, it was made by a Catholic social media influencer that I'd never heard of before, but whom had a massive, very impressive following there. So out of that surprise, I decided to, watch it all the way through and see what she had to say. But I will admit, I was frustrated by what I heard and quickly considered making a response video to it. Now, as a bit of background to this, as I was preparing this response video, but before I actually sat down to film, I decided to reach out to the person in question to ask her if it would be a big problem for her if I created this response, explaining that, I disagree with the content of her video. And I have to share, I was super impressed with her reply because she was extremely encouraging and really humble about it, which strongly confirmed for me that my reasons for not wanting to publicly denounce or to embarrass her was the right instinct, which is also why I'm not identifying her in this video, because refuting or denouncing other speakers isn't why I would make a video like this. The main reason is because I think her opinion is a popular one in the church, which is also suggested by the reaction on the video. And so I'm a lot more interested in engaging with Catholics in general who are persuaded by those sentiments. Because I know people lament the liturgy wars all the time, and yes, that's something we should lament. It's a sad fact that there's division about liturgy today, but the only way to overcome those divisions, at least the severe ones, is by having conversations that are grounded in knowledge and understanding, and then by persuasive arguments that dispel misunderstandings and bad conclusions wrought from poor reasoning. But misinformation or bad arguments or hot takes adopted with little research are going to have the opposite effect. And frankly, that's what most Catholics I talk to about this are tolerating in themselves and in their fellow Catholics. And as long as we do so, the division and the lack of resolution and movement forward are going to persist. So let me try to summarize her video and her arguments. She starts off by asking her viewers if they knew that there are, quote, two types of Catholic Mass you can go to, which she identifies as the Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass. Now, right off the bat, this is a good indication that there's a lack of understanding of the subject, because that's just not factually true. There are many more types of Catholic Mass. What I think she meant to say was that there are two uses in the Latin or the Roman rite of the Church, but even that isn't exactly accurate, because there are about 4 or 5 different uses, like the Ambrosian, the Dominican, the Carthusian, but there's also what Benedict XVI taught were the two forms of the Roman rite, which are popularly known as the Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo. But since Pope Francis's motu proprio Traditionis Custodes, that teaching has been, let's say, confused a bit. But beyond the Roman rite, there are 23 Eastern rites of the Catholic Church, each with their own liturgical rite or family of rites, which means that there are way more than 2 types of Catholic Mass. And again, if this information is foreign to you, it's probably a good hint that humility should govern any kind of opinion you have about liturgy in the Church today. And as a side note, this is why Protestants who insist on calling the Catholic Church the Roman Catholic Church in order to try to diminish its universality sound really dumb. It's the only church in the world that is in full, visible, juridical, and legal union with rites represented from a variety of cultures and valid forms of Christian spirituality, which is a glaring sore spot for anyone who wants to deny that the Catholic Church is the true church, because the Nicene Creed says that Catholicity or universality is a mark of the church, and no other denomination can lay claim to the kind of universality that the Catholic Church has. So anyways, back to the video. She goes on to describe the differences between the Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass by explaining that the Latin Mass is in Latin and the Novus Ordo is in English, which is again not exactly right, because the Novus Ordo is actually promulgated in Latin. It's primarily supposed to be in Latin, but can be celebrated not specifically in English, but in the vernacular, which means the regional language for wherever it is that it's being celebrated. So the source version of the missal that the Novus Ordo is published in is in Latin, and the Church has repeatedly instructed the faithful that it should be primarily, or at least by default celebrated in Latin. The versions that most everyone is familiar with is actually a translation of the Latin Novus Ordo. The traditional Latin Mass, of course, is also in Latin. So then after giving those explanations, she goes on to offer her take about what annoys her about the ongoing debates about liturgy, where she says that she thinks both forms are equally good and valid because they both have a valid Eucharist, and that what bothers her about the conversation is that she gets this weird judgmental energy from people who exclusively attend the Latin Mass, as if, quote, it automatically makes them holier or more Catholic than everybody else. Now, I find this extremely forgivable because this was my opinion for as long as I remained kind of indifferent about the liturgical wars, or in other words, for as long as I was casually uninformed about it. I hadn't taken an interest, which is why I hadn't really done my research, which is why I didn't know what I was talking about, and why my opinions were probably better left unsaid, although they weren't. But the more I stumbled into studying about it, the more I learned, the more I came to realize how little I knew and how easy it was for me to have uninformed opinions about it. And because this is symptomatic of a lot of Catholics, and because we desperately need to do better at liturgy, I'd say we critically need more Catholics willing to do the necessary study, especially Catholics with a big voice like social media influencers. If we're going to talk about liturgy, we should have read things like Sacrosanctum Concilium, Mediator Dei, Trallius Lecitudini, and books like Ratzinger's Spirit of the Liturgy, which should be required reading for at least every clergyman today. And if you don't know any of those documents and obviously haven't spent time reading them, then I would argue that you should recuse yourself from the debates about liturgy, especially, again, if you have a loud voice in the church. But I do hear people express the opinion she shared all the time, which is that though the two forms are different in many ways, they both have a valid Eucharist and are therefore equal. And neither should anyone say that one is better than the other, because that would give off a weird judgmental vibe that suggests you think you're holier or more Catholic than everybody else. And I think most Catholics feel like that's the moderate position to take. But I'd argue again, it's an argument that you really can't make, because it reduces the merits of the liturgy and the Mass down to mere validity. As long as it's valid, nothing else can really be said about what makes it better or worse. And that's absolutely not true. And the church has said as much over and over again. It's why the church has taken such pains to write the documents that I just described, which are only a fraction of the instructions and teachings that are out there coming from the magisterium. If you read any of them, the last thing you'll come away from is that as long as the Mass is valid, everything else is just like window dressing and kind of superfluous. What you will find if you read them is a grave concern on the part of the church that the liturgy is performed with extreme care, fidelity, and excellence, and in such a way that honors the tradition. If validity is all that mattered, the church wouldn't bother so much with all these other instructions and teachings about the form, the music, the architecture, the gestures, and the functions of the priest and the other people who help in liturgy, and on and on. But it does do that. And for my part, I was really honestly taken aback when I first read any of it. I had the preconceived attitude that most of this kind of stuff is just a matter of preference and sways with the fashions and currents of time, only to discover that the church took rite worship extremely seriously. And probably most importantly, the church wouldn't have pushed forward with such dramatic changes in the Novus Ordo if it wasn't thought to be an improvement of the TLM, which means that there can be better and worse forms of liturgy, because the Novus Ordo was massively disruptive. Imagine 1,000 years of only very minor adjustments to the liturgy, and then overnight it's changed in huge strides to the point where many Catholics felt like their religion was taken from them. If the best thing we can say about all the cost of that disruption, all that work, all the division and fighting which has precipitated from it is, hey, look, the new liturgy is just as valid as the old one, then the church's leaders have seriously failed in their responsibility to be caring pastors of the faithful. The only justification for rewriting the liturgy to that degree is if it's a significant improvement. So here's an analogy that I think could be helpful in this conversation. So imagine two different cars a red one and a black one, that are being compared and reviewed by consumer experts. So the cars themselves have some similarities, but quite a few differences as well. And one reviewer concludes that the red car is significantly better than the black one. And he gives all kinds of reasons for why he thinks so, from options to materials, safety, reliability, mileage, and just on and on. The second reviewer concludes that both cars are equally praiseworthy. Neither is better than the other by virtue of the fact that they both offer the minimum requirements of what a car should do. And without knowing anything else about the cars, what do you think the most reasonable conclusion would be about them? Would it be A, that the black car is superior to the red car, B, the red car is superior to the black car, or C, that while the cars are different, neither is superior to the other? So of those options, is there one conclusion that is more logical than the other two? I'd say yes, because right away we can dismiss option A, because there's no evidence that this is true. From what we know, nobody has claimed or offered evidence that the black car is superior to the red. Both reviewers have told us that the red car is at least as good as the black car. So then we're just left with options B and C. Either they're equal or the red car is actually better. Now, we also know that the cars have considerable differences, so the likelihood of them being equal already seems a little bit suspicious. When someone evaluates two things that are different and claims they are equal, I don't know, there's probably a motive that has to do with something other than merit or quality. It's likely that they're more motivated by something like a desire to avoid criticizing one of the contenders. But the expert who favors the red car was able to find more that the red car offers than the black car. And since both experts agree that the red car is at least as good as the black car, and one of them found that the red car is significantly superior based on the evidence he provides, evidence his colleague seems to have overlooked, then I'd say it's extremely likely and reasonable that the red car is in fact superior to the black car. And I expect the relevance of this analogy is pretty obvious to anyone listening, because it really isn't effective or helpful when comparing two things to reduce the criteria of evaluation to the minimum standard of validity and then say, you know, they're both equal. It's like discussing two basketball players, one who is 5'9" and another who is 6'5", and asking the question, is it better to be 5'9" or 6'5", and then arbitrarily setting 5'9" as the standard height from which no improvements can be made, thereby ignoring all the merits of what a greater height would offer. Which, as someone who is 5'9" and played basketball in high school, I can tell you extra height makes a huge difference. And here's the thing about when comparing the Latin Mass to the Novus Ordo. You'll often see people divided into two kinds of camps. There's the camp who favors the Latin Mass, who believes that it's significantly better. People like Peter Kwasniewski, who was interviewed by Matt Fradd about this recently, would fall into that category. And I would strongly recommend you take a listen to that interview and hear what he has to say about it. And then there's those who maybe prefer the Novus Ordo, but won't admit or won't try to defend the position that the Novus Ordo is actually superior. They'll often say what the young lady in this TikTok video said, which is that, you know, they're both equally valid. And I get it. I understand our reluctance to compare liturgies like this. We shouldn't be setting ourselves up as critics of liturgy. It's something we should simply inherit and then revere in turn. But this is what rewriting the liturgy did as a precedent. It established that we can and should criticize liturgy and even recreate it if we find that those criticisms merit it, which is what happened and which I believe was a dangerous precedent, because this is the consequence. Everyone feels justified in acting like a movie critic with respect to liturgy, myself included. And if liturgical reform is ever going to be productive, I think we have to be more honest and willing to compare the two and say that one is better than the other. Not because judging liturgy is an inherently good thing to do, but this is just the situation we find ourselves. Under the circumstances, it's not wrong to make those comparisons, and it's not judgmental. And I'd argue it's necessary for us to move past the resentments and divisions that are not only present, but I'd say potentially growing in the current climate of the church. And at the very least, in making those kinds of comparisons, it might open us up to the kind of reform that Pope Benedict had envisioned, which was a kind of mutual enrichment of the two. I'd love to see a future scenario in the church where there is only one use of the popular Roman rite, one we can all be proud of, and one that takes the best from the entire tradition available to us. Maybe just one last point that I'll leave you with is that as Catholics, when we have these kinds of debates, I think that we should avoid complaining that when someone compares something to another and evaluates its superiority, that we shouldn't say that that's a form of immoral judgmentalism necessarily, because that's the exact kind of reasoning that we hear all the time from non-Catholics who accuse us of being holier than thou for simply asserting that our religion is true in ways that others are not. Does that make Catholics wrong? Of course not. So we shouldn't then turn around and use this same kind of argumentation and thinking to resolve our internal debates. So no matter how bleak the decline of society could get, the one thing I'm always encouraged by is faith-filled families reproducing a generation who can turn the boat around. But that can't happen if Catholics aren't getting married and having those babies, which is easier said than done in today's world. I'm constantly hearing reports from young people who are saying how hard it is to find good matches with other faithful Catholics. And while there's no silver bullet solution to those challenges, I've had the chance to get to know the people at Catholic Match. And I can honestly recommend them as a company who is intentionally doing everything they can to create tools to help people move towards sacramental marriages. I personally know of couples who met that way and have been happily married 4 years since. So please don't give up on holding out for a Catholic match. It's worth a try if you haven't already. And if you have, I would say give it another try and see if God's providence will conspire to your benefit. Just download their app or head over to catholicmatch.com.